Welcome to Flatwater Free Conversation. My name is Michael Severe. I'm joined this time by Sarah Baker Hansen, of course, longtime Omaha food critic, and it takes two people, I think, to interview our next guest.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. No doubt. And our next guest is here. David Utterback is joining us here. Of course, Yoshitomo, we know very well, Koji, and his brand new project that we'll talk more about as well as we go along. But first, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the opportunity.
This is a little bit of a rhetorical question because there's no way you're going to know the answer. Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me in a podcast?
No.
I think you said it to everybody, but you said, no California rolls. There will be no California rolls. I'm going to change the way people think about sushi. Mission accomplished or still in progress?
I think it's still in progress. You know, I think, we still get guests that come in every day that are so used to the way that they've been eating sushi, and that it's still being served like that everywhere, and so we're still, changing people's minds.
Every day?
Every day.
Wow.
We still get people that, I will go and I'll check the back end of our point of sale system and see what was sold. And if you want to sell a California roll, you have to manually sort of type it in. So I'll see those and I'll be like, we sold 6 California rolls last month? How did we do that?
Wow, so
right?
Someone makes them?
Oh yeah, we'll make them.
People?
If you want to give me money for a cheeseburger of sushi, I'll take it.
I find it so perplexing that of all the things on your menu, that is what people would want.
I mean, not everybody is.
All they know, right? Some people have.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody is ready to jump off the high dive.
Yeah.
Right.
I came here once with a friend. I'm pretty sure I've told you this before, and he did not know what to do without wasabi, ginger, and soy sauce. And he actually asked for it, and I was like, no. They all have sauce. See how they have sauce, and he just couldn't get through his head that he needed that.
We'll give it to you if you ask.
Yeah,
but we're at least going to be like, hey, just try it the other way, and if you still need that stuff, great.
Yeah.
You do you. It's still your food, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. When we were talking for the story, you talked about the ritualistic way that people eat, and I think that applies to all food. But for some reason in this country, it especially applies to sushi. People do things that is considered totally impolite, the chopsticks.
Oh yeah,
chopstick.
The chopstick rubbing is
and
the
stabbing of the chopsticks into a bowl of rice or something.
Oh, yeah,
You're
absolutely.
definitely not supposed to do those things.
Right. The chopstick thing. I know that guests don't mean any slight towards us when they do it, but I know that it is. So when I see it, I'm like, oh, that guy,
too.
right? But what other cuisine do you show up to your meal and you just start doing weird things with your utensils, right?
Yeah.
That's you go to the French restaurant, you grab your fork and you grab your knife and you just start playing with it before, weird.
Yeah, it is.
It's I think for Americans in general, almost everything we know cultural, we get from movies.
Sure.
So Karate Kid 2 taught me how tea is served.
Sure.
And then I found out that was real. That is really how tea is served. The woman had to serve the tea. And I think we learn a lot of that. We also learn by watching. And I think somebody just saw somebody rub and they thought it was the right way to do it.
You're absolutely right. I mean, in the omakase room, it's a fancy meal, right? And everyone's trying to be on their best behavior, but they've never been in that environment before. Yeah. And so, you have all of these things and you're not, they're different. It's a different setup. And you're not quite sure what you can, what's allowed, and so one person will decide to do something and then I'll see the rest of the table do it, right? So there's a little finger towel to wipe your fingers on in between courses, and it's just a little tiny napkin. And no one will know what to do with it. But one person will take it, unfold it, and maybe wipe their face, and then the rest of the table will all wipe their face with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? We have a little plate where I serve the sushi one by one. You're not really supposed to move it, but if one person at that counter doesn't know that, he'll pick it up, he'll eat it, and then everyone at the counter thinks, right? So it is a lot of, if he's doing it, it must be okay.
I've learned a lot from eating at your counter, because I eat out a lot, but I learned, the first thing I learned was the soy sauce, and you explained that to us very early on. And then the other main thing is to pick up the sushi with your hand.
Yeah.
And that was something that I just had never even known, because I think eating with your hands in this country is, it's like
There's only certain
impolite.
things we're allowed to do it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Finger
You're not really supposed to. It's just not a thing that a lot of people do.
Right.
And now I always do that, whether I'm here or somewhere else.
And it makes the
they hand to
experience
me,
so much better.
It's way better.
Right?
Yeah.
You go in that room though, and you told me this. You're paying for 2 hours, 2.5 hours of great dishes, but we're paying for 2.5 hours of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You telling us stories, and you have the opportunity to direct people and teach them. So the next person who's watching the person who went to your omakase can go, well, that's how you do it.
Right.
You're teaching generations.
Yeah, we're slowly, one by one, counter by counter, trying to kind of shift it to a better place.
Yeah.
Right? So we're just a little more educated.
Do you see other people that have dined here a lot of times who now do things the way you would hope that they do? How does that feel?
Great. You have people who, probably would have happily gone through their lives just eating the pretty basic sushi they always have. And, now they're, I have some guests that have stopped just going to regular sushi bars and only come to the special counter, or will only come here. But their enjoyment of sushi has grown, right? It was just a food that you ate every once in a while. It was a food that you didn't put much thought into it. It was just in the repertoire of restaurants or types of food that you ate every month. And now it has changed from, the Olive Garden, whatever, we just eat. You don't think about it. You don't go home and tell someone, I went to the Olive Garden. I got the tour of Italy, right? Yeah. To now, sushi has become a special meal every time that they go out, and their enjoyment of it has improved.
Yeah.
So how did we get here? Obviously, you weren't doing this at the beginning of your working career.
No.
How did you transition from what you were doing, and how did you discover this is what you wanted to do?
So, I had started making sushi. It was a couple of years. I was just making basic, everyday sushi that, we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I took my first trip to Japan all by myself. It's very scary. Never really been on a plane, as an adult. And so I made I managed to get a reservation at an omakase counter. And, at the time, I didn't know that really these omakase counters, these sushi counters existed. And so I just wanted to eat the best sushi in Tokyo. And so, in my hotel, I brought my laptop, I Googled best sushi in Tokyo, like a real pro does. And we, to put this in perspective, this is far enough back to before lists.
Yeah.
And
there was
you,
no eater.com.
right. You
There was
couldn't
no,
just
like-
find out what the best, restaurants were.
Yeah.
There was no ranking systems.
Right. There was probably no, was there Yelp or things like that?
Maybe.
But, would you have even trusted them?
I mean, I don't think it exists in
Yeah,
Japan.
probably not.
This is before food as pornography. Before we were just romanticizing individual bites of food and the labors of these chefs. And so it was just, a whole bunch of people says this is the best sushi in Tokyo. And so, I took that information down to the concierge at the hotel, asked him to make a phone call, and I think it was the next day I ended up in the counter of Jiro Ono, which is Sukiyabashi Jiro, which is the from the famous documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And back then, they were a popular counter, but I was the only diner that day.
Wow.
10 seats, just me. There was 5 sushi chefs all just standing there, ready to serve 10 people. Now it's a private restaurant.
Is it still in the subway station?
Yeah. So it's actually in a office building. It's in the basement of the office building, but there's a subway exit directly attached to the basement of that. So when you come out, it's right there. And most people walking by have no idea that this counter's there.
Right.
But there's a door and a little sign. It used to be in Japanese and now it's in English. But so many people have tried to get into that restaurant and it's private now. You have to almost be a member. You have to go a lot. to get in. But there's a sign in front, and before it was in Japanese, and it roughly translated to, please don't take pictures of this door. Like, we're fully reserved, you can't get in. But I ended up, this far enough back, I ended up at this counter, and I just never experienced food like that before, right? I was a guy who just worked at a restaurant, just
So
made regular food.
Was it like, was it similar, or I guess I've seen the movie and seen the Bourdain, Bourdain eating there and all of that. Was it similar to sort of like what you do now? Like, did they hand you the piece and did you? Yeah. It was exactly like that.
Yeah. It's exactly like the documentary, just a standard service. And I remember at the time I was trying to take pictures of it. And I think I was using like my Razor phone.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Still one of the greatest phones ever.
Yeah, and I took too long to take one of the photos, and the chef, Jiro, he grabbed the piece and threw it in the garbage.
Wow.
Because I was taking too long.
Yeah.
And I didn't know.
That was one of the first things you told me too. Like, don't linger around.
Right away.
So
Yeah.
I am at your.
I think I died of embarrassment. Like right there. I'm actually still on the floor of that restaurant, and this is my life flashing forward.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so wild to me that, you probably are maybe the single person I know in like all of the chefs of everyone I've ever met that's actually eaten there.
Yeah, but once the documentary came out, it became impossible to get in.
Yeah.
To the point where now it's a private counter. Because it's private, their 3 Michelin stars got removed.
Yeah.
And now, the only way you can really experience that counter is if you just happen to know somebody who goes there every month.
Yeah. So you went to the counter and then you sent them a letter. So tell about the letter.
Actually, I
Or you left it there.
I brought a letter.
Oh, you brought it. You don't
Yeah.
have written it. Okay.
And my mom wrote the letter.
I was going to ask you, did you write it in English? Did you write it in Japanese?
It was in Japanese, and my mom's pretty old school. She comes from a really tiny island of 6,000 people, and so grew up on a farm. So she wrote that thing in pencil. Pencil she sharpened with a razor because she doesn't use a pencil sharpener.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it said. Yeah, I just asked her to write me a letter saying if I could stage, for a short period of time.
Which is an
intern. Yeah, just work for free.
Yeah, unpaid.
A couple of months. Yeah, I left a letter.
So then did you get you got an email, right?
I got an email, and it was in Japanese.
So your mom must have put your email in the letter.
Yes, I was like, put my email, my phone number, all that stuff.
Right.
And the return email was in Japanese. So I'm like, I don't know what this says, and translate. The internet didn't really have that.
Yeah. Right,
So I sent it off to a cousin. The cousin translates it. Wow, they're going to give you a job, but it's for 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you want to come, you got to come for 10 years. So I sent her a thing, she translated, I sent it to them. I think this whole time they think I speak Japanese.
Sure, so you gave
Right?
me a letter.
Because
Yeah.
everything's in Japanese. So imagine I show up actually taking the job and just I don't speak at all.
Yeah.
It was a back and forth for a while. They finally settled on letting me come for 3 years. That wouldn't work. I had just gotten married. My wife would leave me. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I declined that position, but I think at the end of the day, I'm better for it. I'm actually happier having not taken that position now.
How many times have you been since then?
Yeah.
Sorry.
There?
How many have you been to Japan since then, just to go and learn more?
13 times. I go about twice a year now.
And what was this first year when you went the first time?
2009?
Yeah.
Okay,
2009?
wow. So in 14 years, basically.
Yeah.
Going every year.
Yeah.
One of the really interesting things you said when we were talking, and I didn't put this in the story, but I thought it was really interesting. You said, like, if my life would have allowed me to go, like, we wouldn't be talking right now, because I'd still be there.
Right.
I would have been finishing up, 2, maybe 3 years ago. I'd either have stayed there and continue working that counter, or come home. And, when you have experience like that, where can you work that, you can take advantage of it? There's only so many cities, right? New York, LA, San Francisco, right? You're not committing to 10 years through all of that and then coming home to your small town, and right.
Yeah.
Right. That's like a NASA astronaut, coming home to work the flight deck at your local airport.
Right.
You're somewhat overqualified at that time.
So when you thought about opening your own place, was it about an omakase you thought about originally, or you thought you were going to do what you're doing here at Yoshitomo, or what was the original plan when you said?
So the original plan, really was to just get me a job so I could have some money and take care of my family.
Right.
It was out of necessity and need, but I didn't want to work for anyone else anymore. And I had been doing this omakase thing. I was pretty realistic with myself. I knew that I couldn't just open up a counter.
Yeah.
We would have maybe lasted 2 or 3 months. Everybody in the city who wanted to do it probably would have done it, and that'd have been it.
Yeah.
And so we would need to educate diners slowly on that. And so, we built a little side counter here, but the whole idea was, Yoshitomo was just going to give me a job. I don't think my initial idea of the restaurant was to change the game. It was just to sort of tap into things that I'd already done and maybe make the changes where I thought they could be better, little small changes.
You talked a lot about how, when you were starting out and when you got back from that trip to Japan, you were really focused on like improving, not just improving kind of your technique, but improving quality, and kind of, you did see, it seems like you did kind of have this idea in your head that you wanted to create an experience that was different.
I saw these guys working and I desperately wanted to be them.
Yeah.
But I was in situations where that's just, you're so far away from that. But, how can I improve myself and try to get there? And so a lot of that was just, reaching for any way that I could build a skill, learn a thing, take some of these things and push it closer to this quality level.
Yeah, and you're completely self-taught. And so I think a lot of people probably don't realize that.
Yeah.
Like, you do research and on social media and the internet
And trips to
Japan,
Yeah.
and you're always like eating, and that's sort of like a self-education, really.
Right, and it's weird, I only know of a handful of self-taught sushi chefs running counters in Japan.
Yeah.
And even when you find out, everyone's like, wow, I can't believe you're self-taught. But for me, it was a necessity. There just wasn't somebody who was so skilled in the things that I wanted to learn. Of course, there were, I've worked with many skilled people, but these specific preparations, and no one had worked in an omakase counter. So the only way I was going to be able to do this thing that I wanted to do was to go there and watch, learn, bring it back, experiment. And it's, to me, because of that, I feel like I'm stronger and I'm better for it. I'm a better chef. One of the great, one of the advantage of going and doing, 10 years with a Jiro or a Saito or one of these greats is that you walk in the door and somebody has already made 120 years generational mistakes learning how to get it right. And you can show up and they just go, this is how you prepare this. We know this is the perfect way to do it.
Right.
And you spend 10 years learning the perfect way to do it their way. But when you get done, you only know how to do it their way. And you're a little bit restricted by that. And why would you change that, right? If you spent 10 years developing a skill in the style of someone else and you go out on your own, why would you just then do something completely different?
Yeah.
So it's not even in your best interest to grow. And that's why you see a lot of those counters, most of the counters, they're kind of the same. I will go eat 7, 8 omakases and I can tell you they're not all over the place. You see a style, they're all kind of the same. This one is a different style, but the quality levels are pretty much the same and all that. And so, because I don't have that, I've had to teach myself everything. And for me to get to the same end, right, the same preparation, I just have to ruin it over and over and over. I just have to ram my head into the wall until I finally break through. But once I have, I can take it apart, I can put it back together, I can remix it, I know what works and what doesn't. And as such, now my style isn't like a Tokyo style.
It's completely your own.
It's my own style. It's a mishmash of so many different people's styles and things that I've liked over the years that it would be really out of place in Tokyo or in Fukuoka or in all these places, because it's, you come expecting one style and it's all over the place.
Yeah.
You said to us at Koji that everybody's pretty much getting the same fish. It's the style, but I think it's the conversation. I still remember you told us a story over at Ugly Duck about there was a pond or something where they threw tangerine peelings in there, and that's why the fish had a certain. That will stay with me forever.
Sure.
It's what you're doing, standing there talking to us.
Sure.
As great as the food is, and it is amazing,
Yeah.
but it's the conversation that sets you apart from the other people.
And that's why I personally like it. I'm crazy about sushi. I'm one of the handful of sushi chefs you'll ever meet who's just wild about it. I love sitting down at other people's counters, and as awkward as you all feel on the other side of the counter, I'm the same. I'm there and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to touch. I don't know if this is okay or not, and I'm just like waiting for the other. I do this every week, and I've been to every counter, and I'm still nervous on the other side. But what I love about it is, you get that time with the chef. What other restaurant do you spend 2 hours with the chef? The finest restaurants in the world, the chef's generally not even there.
Yeah.
But everyone's back in the kitchen, a plate gets handed out. That person, who's bringing out that food didn't make it, they weren't connected to it. They have information on it, but it's only so deep, right? And so in an omakase room, it's so great. You're connected to the person who made it, sourced it, knows the story, is in love with it.
Yeah.
And you can feel that.
When I was writing the story, I talked to your friend Devin, who was your first and only guest when you did your first pop-up.
Yep.
And the first thing he said was, I'd never spent time with a chef like that.
Yeah.
Like, however many years later that's been, that was the first thing he said. And then he talked about, how awesome it was and his memories of it. But I think that is really what sticks with people.
Yeah, and if you've never had an opportunity to come at an omakase counter or a private event with the chef, I think that's what people are really into.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. So let's talk about, you're opening a restaurant to give yourself a job, which you said, but you're also taking on the responsibility of having employees, of the chance of maybe this not working. What was that feeling? Were you nervous? You're just like, this is what I have to do, this is what I do. I know it was on a shoestring budget, kind of describe that way.
Everything was a shoestring budget, It had to work. I had to, paint the walls. I had to, the burnt wood walls in here, I did that with a torch out back. I don't have any more leg hair because I burned it all off, in that week where I was doing the walls.
Right.
And so, if you're not personally invested in your restaurant, I think a lot of restaurants fail because there isn't somebody who's there who is going to live and die by the success of that restaurant, right? If it's always somebody else's problem to make it better, it's never going to get better. And so here it was, we had almost no money in the bank for the first 6 months. I didn't take a paycheck for 3 months. I sold all of my stuff, knives, guitars, motorcycle, just all this stuff that I had spent the last 10 years working and to own. I sold it all to survive these, 6 months where the restaurant was kind of being put together and then us being open. And then even beyond that, we're not in the greatest location in the city. We're not one of the first guys on the block to make sushi. We're a secret. We're still somewhat of a secret. As much as people talk about us, I come across people every week. It's like, wow, I didn't know that this even existed.
Yeah.
And so, there were days where we had 10, 15 people come into the restaurant. And it was like that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, you're just hoping that you can cover people's payrolls and buy the food, and then you're kind of limited in the things you can do because the money coming in and out won't allow you to make big changes.
Yeah.
And on top of that, instead of, me just making the food and being the chef, now I'm doing payroll and I'm doing accounting and I'm taking care of all of the tasks where in previous restaurants and companies I'd worked for, there were people for that, right? There was an accountant, there was somebody who did all of these things. I made the website. I plunged the toilet. Up until last year, it was me scooping the snow in front of the restaurant. And so it's hard for me to give that up now. Now I feel like I'm too attached to it all. It's, it was a rough 2 years, right?
Yeah, I think I still encounter people, not every day, but regularly, who ask me about you, about Yoshitomo, and now the area of fascination is Ota. People want to know, how do I get a seat? What's it like? How much is it? I've probably had a dozen people ask me about it because I was lucky enough to sit at your counter and write a different story, which is just about Ota and the experience. And what is so you started off Yoshitomo, it was razor thin budget, and then it starts to become known. Then you start Koji. You introduce a whole second food to Omaha that no one knows about. And now you're taking it to this next level. So have you seen, I guess I'm curious, what's the Ota crowd like? Who are the diners? Are they people who've already been here and know you and are just jazzed? Or are they new?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are, for the longest time it was just restaurant guests who, we would sort of suggest this other experience, right? If you came in and you ordered all the, you seemed like you would enjoy it, we would recommend that. And those people would tell their friends and so on and so on. And we've really let the guests themselves help sort of fill the room, right? With people who would also enjoy it.
Just total word of mouth.
Right, because you're not going to tell your friends who you don't think would like it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody in there is, I think this person would love this. And they bring those people. So really, I almost can't fail, right? It's just people I know this person would absolutely love this.
Right.
And then they bring them. But, so for a long time it was that. I get a couple people every week who have literally never been in any of our restaurants and just show up at the counter. Which kind of blows my mind.
See, that's the power of Yelp, which wasn't there in Japan for you. But now people will just search and it pops up and I got to go there.
And now we're getting people who are flying in for the experience. And, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
I think there was a burger restaurant in Omaha years ago. Guy opened a second location. Both ended up closing. I believe that was why you started doing the story on second locations. Owners open the second location. And you double your paperwork and you double your staff and you just can't split yourself in two.
Yeah, you need to clone yourself.
Exactly. How have you made it work? Because I don't think you sleep, not that I know of, but you're constantly in motion. How do you make it work?
I don't know if I've made it work yet. It's still a struggle. And, these restaurants are small. And we still can't afford things that I need, in the back end, right? We need a couple of more restaurants before I can afford to do that. We don't have a pastry chef, but one of our restaurants can't afford one. And two still can't afford one. But I think if we had a third, between all three, we could afford one pastry chef, right? And so that's kind of where we're at, is our restaurants are so small. You have all the headaches of a restaurant and a bigger one, but you're not getting the cash flow that you need. And so that makes it difficult. If I need to work on a menu, for another location or here or in there, I can only do one thing at a time. So if I spend a whole morning running errands and doing paperwork and responding to emails, I really want to be working on menus and checking up on stuff and seeing how the staff's doing. And so I don't think I've solved that problem yet. It's a lot of, something's on fire, you need to go drive to the other restaurant and go put that fire out. But I'm getting better at allowing other people to take on more responsibility. And
That's hard.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, our GM, you know, my partner in crime here at Yoshi, you know, Jay Hendrickson, our SOM in the omakase room is just over the last couple of years has taken on a lot of that stuff, and is now I get more time to work on menus and tweaks. So I'm hoping if things go well and we can get another restaurant or two, you know, behind us, that I can start building an office of people who can, you know, I can sort of separate myself from those everyday tasks that don't seem like they're going to take a long time, but just eat up your whole day.
Yeah. When I was interviewing you, you were preparing to like create a new dish for the omakase. So like, what's the newest thing you're working on? You said you want to like break Yoshitomo.
Yeah, you know, these things are.
I didn't like that part of the article.
I loved it. That was
I didn't
my
like
favorite
that
part.
at all. Like,
These ideas.
Don't do that.
These
You love this
ideas,
place.
they slowly simmer, and you know, if you talk to the staff, you know, sometimes, you know, they just got to be ready to pivot and move at any time.
Sure.
Like I'll go back there and we're going to do it like this. A couple hours later, I'm like, I've decided completely against that. Stop doing that. We're going to do something different. I just feel like, you know, if we're building restaurants and we're trying to create new experiences, I don't want to build a whole new restaurant to create a whole new experience that I just want to try out.
Yeah.
And so the idea is maybe kind of a tiers. We've got restaurants that specialize in this kind of experience. You know, Koji is certainly a restaurant that's a little closer to the regular sushi bars that everyone's used to going to.
Right.
And so, you know, maybe all the sushi rolls live there. And maybe Yoshitomo evolves to a point where we're, you know, more fine dining. Right now, Yoshitomo's in this place where we've got kind of a foot in both worlds. And it makes us accessible, right? And I think that's a lot of our success. Our success is you come in maybe with a low experience level, and you come in looking for that California roll.
Right.
And then while you're here, we kind of push you in, you know, we push you into a new place. And so I think us having feet in, you know, both worlds has been very helpful, but I think we're getting to the place where the restaurant's full enough where we don't need to introduce people to what we do, to what we want to do. You know, we want to give you a fine dining experience. We want to give you something new.
Yeah.
And we want to make that accessible to people who wouldn't normally make reservations at that kind of restaurant.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a slow simmering idea. Who knows if it'll ever really happen. That's a pretty big rug to pull out from the restaurant. You know, the sushi menu, the rolls, you know, they're kind of the engine. And so it's like, can the car run if I take that out and put something else in?
You showed me a list that you had of ideas that was like, how many ideas were on it? Like 100 or something? I mean, it was crazy.
I was working on some before you guys walked in.
And so I think about that, and I also think about like just a second to talk about an experience that I've had over and over eating at Yoshitomo, which is you're like, oh, here's the thing I'm working on. And it's happened at Koji also. Here's the thing we're working on. And then I can think of hama toast as one example. The crab rice is another example. And the fuanagi is another example. I've had so many different versions of those. I could probably go back and look at my phone and find like 4 different versions of some of those. Like the Korean corn, the cheese corn.
Even we're working on a new one for that right now.
Right. And so when I wrote my review, I had like a totally different version of it than what it is now. So like if someone were to read that and then they would go to order it, it would be a completely different dish.
And I actually love that.
Me too.
That's what
Me too.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
You know, I come from a place where I made, you know, pretty much the same menu for 12 years. And, you know, as a cook, you're just kind of gets boring. You know, you don't evolve, right?
But you do it every day. We only get to do it like once
Sure,
a month.
but
and so
you know,
it's hard for Americans in general to have things change on their menu.
Well, people
it
get
really
very
is.
attached.
Yes,
Like,
they
there
do.
are a lot of restaurants in Omaha that have not changed their menu in literally
They still
40
get
years.
mascaccioli
You
on
know,
the side.
they're doing the exact same
definitely.
thing,
Right.
but you do not subscribe
and
to
you
that.
see, and you see a lot of those restaurants after how many years, they're not doing so well.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
People age out
Yeah.
of the restaurant, and the new people coming in don't get it or appreciate it.
And tastes have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And
big time.
I strongly believe that in the decade I've been writing about food in Omaha, or now almost more than that, the dining population of Omaha is drastically changed.
Absolutely. They've evolved. They're
Yeah.
way more savvy. You know, they're having more experiences outside of the city.
And they're looking for experiences like that here.
Right. And you know, so I like that things change. I want you to not be able to have all the things that you want all the time. Right? Being forced to try something new because the thing that you wanted wasn't there is one of the secrets to our success.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it changes a little bit, you know, it's like your favorite band, man. You either evolve with the band or they just move on without you.
I mean, Hama Toast I loved.
Yeah.
There was one iteration of it that I loved. And it's different now.
Yeah.
But it's still amazing. And I would still encourage anyone
And
who
we're still
hasn't
like,
tried it to have
that's
it.
one that's not like all these things, we don't stop thinking about them. Like
Right.
I'm still,
It's not done.
I had a version of toast at the Antler Room where it was just so crispy and perfect on all sides that I'm like, how do I figure out how they did that and make that Hama toast like that,
Yeah.
right? So even that, like, I think there's still room for it to evolve and grow
Yeah.
into a better version of itself.
And I think that's really cool. Like, that's exciting to me as a diner in a way that, you know, even if I order something that I've had before, I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same.
Right.
And that sort of, I don't know, that makes me feel really excited every time I eat here.
If the thing goes away, though, I would be brokenhearted.
Well, you know, he's going to make you
try.
try the new version
get
of that, which I tried last
six-
time.
oh, really? There's a new
Yeah,
version?
there's a new version.
The first version is amazing. It's the best dish I've ever had.
So,
Literally, it's the best
so
I've ever had.
you know, this is
And it's one bite.
like, I don't know if you teed me up for this,
I didn't.
Yeah.
but you know, speaking of that Wagyu bite, right? It's a pretty signature item for our restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, I'm starting to see it
Other people.
and other doing it, and that's great. That's you know, I do that stuff. All chefs do it. That's how you know you really made it when somebody's copying your ideas. That's awesome. But even this morning, we just added an upgraded version of that to the menu, right? And I just worked on it with the chefs. It's like instead of domestic beef, now it's a Japanese Wagyu, same sea urchin butter. Now it gets a caviar on top, a kiss of caviar, and a bunch of black truffles, right? So like,
You're excited.
I'm excited about everything.
one of the things if you ask Jay or some of the chefs around here is something I'm always asking is, can we make it better? Can we take this thing? Can we make it better? Can we adjust? Right? Nothing is set. We're not just going to do it the same way forever.
And I think the fact that you are self-taught and that you don't have that this is the way sort of burned into your brain for decades allows you to be able to say, well, this is the best ingredient, and this is we're using all the best ingredients, and we can make this bite and it tastes really good. But what else can we do?
Right.
How do we like break it pretty much?
You know, when cooks come to work here, that's also translated into literally how we cook in the restaurant. Since I don't have any training, I didn't spend that much time cooking in hot kitchens. And we don't have a hot kitchen here, right? So like, chefs come in looking to gain some experience and do this and that. And I'm like, I have to set them down and be like, we make really weird food here. We use torches, microwave, toaster oven, smoker, sous vide, induction burners, all the regular trappings of a regular restaurant. We just don't have that. We don't have an oven, right? So how do we execute some of these things that would be so easy in a regular kitchen, but here it's just a monumental task to get bread made, right? Like you don't make a giant loaf of sourdough in a small Target toaster oven, right? So for us to even get dishes,
That is so wild.
for us to
You're
get
making
dishes on the menu
toaster.
in such the way that we do and the quality level that we do requires some real guerrilla cooking, right? It's just, we got to think completely outside of that frame of the normal restaurant. And so it's just, you see it in the dishes, you see it in the cooking and the equipment here. We looked into possibly building out a kitchen here. And the price was so high that I'm like, you know, how much enjoyment is that going to add to the guests here, right? If us having an oven and a 6-range burner and a fryer, can we make better food than we're making currently? And I'm not sure that we can. It makes some tasks easier. But I think it would also, in some ways, tamp a little bit of the weird creativity that we've got here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like that a number of restaurants that are kind of stuck. I think of Herbsan. They're the little tiny kitchen.
Oh, I think about La Bouvette.
Yeah, exactly. There's
You
so many
know,
places.
like
La
they
Bouvette's better.
they work in a toaster oven.
Yeah, if you go down there and you see the cook, it's one guy, a camp stove against the world.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, they make it happen every day is amazing. And it actually gives me a lot of hope that we can do something similar here. 'Cause I always think of when I'm not sure if we can do something either personally or in the restaurant, I think of other people who've made it happen with less, right? Like, are we going to be able to stay open? Are we going to be able to be successful? And I think of that little tiny Chinese restaurant where it's barely any people going, and they've been open for 20 years. I'm like, we can make it work. She can make it work. We can make it work.
Yeah.
If they can cook for 50 people every night on a camp stove, we can make it work with our Target toaster oven.
Yeah.
A big part of your story, of course, was about James Beard Award.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like? They narrowed down, and your name is there. Yoshitomo's there. What was that like for you?
Amazing. I mean, I
Were you waiting
even-
for the email to come?
No.
Like I knew the email was coming that morning because it tells us, and I was waiting for it. Were you not sitting?
No, I had written even the semifinals off.
Really?
So kind of the way these things have worked in the past, where you're either an annual nominee or a semifinalist, and you're kind of a semifinalist until, you know, there's a new shiny thing and everybody wants to focus on that, and you just kind of get left behind, or you're one and done.
And
right?
you were nominated in 2020.
In 2020.
But then there were no awards.
Right, but because, you know, last year we weren't nominated at all.
No.
I had just figured that we were a one and done, and I was like, wow, okay, that was cool. That was a fun time that we had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I texted you that morning.
Right.
You said you didn't even know. It wasn't even on your radar.
No, I was hung over on wine, getting coffee, you know, at Starbucks.
Yeah. From your wine bar down the street. Which you
yeah.
failed to mention that you actually also own a wine bar.
really? I did not know that.
And my phone just starts blowing up from
I
people
bet,
going,
I bet, yeah.
congrats. And, you know, I'm a little hungover, so I'm thinking,
What did I do last night?
what did I do last night?
Yeah.
What did I announce? You know, a bottle of wine in, and it was the same for the finalist. Actually, I was a little hungover on wine, getting some coffee in a drive-through, and my phone's blowing up again.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, when I look at these lists, you know, especially over the last decade, you know, restaurants that, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or something, but, you know, I never thought that we're that restaurant. You know, I go to the restaurants that are on that list.
Yeah.
And when I have such an amazing time at those restaurants, you know, they're just amazing. You know, and maybe it's because I'm in this restaurant every day working it. I just never feel that we're that restaurant for people, you know. And so, you know, us making it to this finalist stage, you know, it's I never thought it was even possible, right? It was just 6 years ago I was selling all of my stuff,
Yeah.
right? Just so that I could put this thing together so I could just have a job, and now we are where we are today.
Yeah. So you're going to the awards in Chicago.
Yes.
So you won't be surprised. You will be surprised, but you won't be getting texts of someone else
You'll
telling
know.
you. You'll know. You'll be the first to
I'll
know.
either win in front of 2,000 people, or there'll be 2,000 people there watching someone else win. We're cautiously optimistic. You know, the odds aren't in our favor. The history of these awards, there really hasn't been a nominee until recently outside of the 3 big cities in our region, and so, you know, if we did not win, nothing changes, right? It wouldn't everything would stay the same.
What happens if you do win them?
I don't know. I'm a little worried about it between us.
Between us and everyone
Because
who's
of how
going to listen to this
popular?
podcast.
Yes.
It could be.
You know,
it could make
to be honest, since the pandemic, that put a lot of my career and life back into focus.
Oh, yeah.
I started spending way more time at home. I made some pretty hard and fast rules, steady rules about when I would be home, how much I would work, how much I would let the restaurant and my career control my life.
And you did some really incredibly creative stuff during that period
Yeah,
too.
Change the whole room around. I mean,
Yeah.
take out only.
Well,
it was
and
superb.
homakase.
you're right.
Yeah.
That was.
And
Which is
so
hard to do with sushi, right? I mean, the hardest food group, how do they do it with?
I can tell you 100% honestly, I will never forget the day in 2020 that Dave himself showed up at our door and handed me my homakase and a piece of paper to pull up on my phone a video of Dave telling me what each bite was.
Oh, wow.
It was, I think, it was such a dark time.
Right.
And that was, it was scary. But even just I remember a few other chefs, a very small handful, delivering food to me, and I was just I almost want to start crying because it was so cool to see you at my door. There you were, doing it.
We were hustling.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been hustling for so long now. I just
Right.
don't know another way.
Yeah.
I'm just worried that, with a win comes maybe some expectations that I'm afraid that we just can't meet. Right now, we're the plucky little restaurant.
Yeah.
New guests come in, they're not sure what to expect, and then we over deliver.
Yeah.
Right? You came in looking for a California roll, and we just gave you, Japanese Wagyu, caviar, and a black truffle. When you win, people are coming in expecting that as the base level.
Right.
And they expect you to deliver consistently every day on that. And when you don't, it's hard for me to take that sort of criticism when we let people down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've
When
heard
I-
of chefs say that at Michelin
Yeah,
restaurant.
when
You
I-
earn it every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, you have to earn it every time somebody walks in the door.
Yeah.
Right.
When I interviewed your friend from Kansas City, who runs the Antler Room, who I actually met when we ate at a omakase here, he was talking about how what you do takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to not be so caught up in the headspace of, oh, I'm in Nebraska, so I can't do this because it just won't work in Nebraska because of every excuse. And that's just not how you operate at all.
Originally it was, right? It originally was, what will they let me do? What can I do? I want to do this, but can I do it? Will I lose guests? Because in the beginning it was just all about filling seats. We got to get every guest we can into the restaurant. But as we started making changes and I started getting away with more and more and more, now I'm at a point where I feel like I can do anything I want, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can hand somebody any dish, no matter how crazy, and people are just willing to try it.
But how freeing to be.
It's
these are
awesome.
Free of those trappings of you have to do it this way.
Right. We've got this thing that we were working on this morning where we dehydrated some kimchi that we had pureed, and they're the most delicious chips. They taste like nacho cheese Doritos, and so all morning it's I think I could serve these to a lot of people and they'd really like that.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, kimchi,
Yeah.
no. They're things that we wouldn't even think of really putting it on the menu or featuring it.
Yeah.
And so being able to just be unchained from what can I get away with?
Yeah.
I know
it's
you had
awesome.
a post on Facebook. This was probably 4 or 5 months ago. You were aging a piece of fish.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
It failed.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that taught you the next time on how to make it right.
Yeah,
And you're allowed to do that now because
we
you're more
fail
successful. Yeah.
all the time. We fail every day.
Yeah.
I have dishes fail every single day. When we're done with this, I'm going to go work on some menu items. I've got 3 or 4 things I'm working on today. I would be surprised if any of them are winners, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're always kind of a step in the right direction. And just being able to kind of look at things that you're doing and actually self-criticize and critique and just go, this isn't good. So oftentimes we kind of get stuck in this idea that oh yeah, everything I'm doing, this art that I'm making is great.
Right.
When maybe it's just not on quite ready for people yet.
Yeah.
And so not looking at a failure and going, wow, we can't ever try anything like that again. And instead just kind of using that to, how can we tweak this to make it work the next time?
It looked like the tempura that you were sifting flour for did work out. I think I saw like a squash blossom.
Very delicious.
Yeah. So is that on the Ota menu right now?
It was. I can't get squash blossoms, and so this week that translated to like tempura morels, because those are in season, and so those are really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, just having that freedom to just, in a normal makase room, you would never serve tempura. That's not a thing that you would do, but nobody knows any better here. I can do whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's Yoshitomo, it's Koji, it's Ota, it's the wine.
1111.
I also
wine bar,
own the wine shop down the street.
Yeah.
which is great.
And that's called
1111.
1111.
Yeah.
Okay.
And has a really cool, I'm telling everyone now, so it's not going to be a secret anymore, but a really cool back patio.
Yeah. It's like kind
We
of
love
a
patios.
secret.
I love patios.
Patios.
Yeah.
So last thing, Dave the Mogul. Is that eventually what you want? Because you said more restaurants would allow you to be able to do more. So what are you thinking? Like 5, 6, 7?
The hope and the goal since the beginning has always been to be able to retire one day, right? And that's always the goal. Someday I can stop destroying my body 12 hours a day to just pay the bills, and so we're always kind of working towards that. And so I think the way that we get there is more restaurants, but more experiences. Not so much here's something that works. Let's just stamp it over and over and over. I think that one of the reasons why I get the freedom to do what I do is because we're constantly trying to give new experiences, and our city's really ready for that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so whenever I see another restaurant open up, in town, and it just kind of looks like another restaurant that's already open in town, I'm just kind of thinking to myself like, man, you had the opportunity to just do something a little bit different. And I get it. It's kind of scary, right? I'm the guy who just purposely doesn't do that. But there's just such an opportunity with all these restaurants to really create something new, instead of just kind of cannibalizing the business and the guests that are already here and the experiences that are already here. If you're just going to open the same restaurant over and over and over, like, why?
Yeah.
Right?
No fun in that.
Right. Yeah. So maybe some new experiences. Just try to get to a point where we can build up that back end. We can bring in some other chefs from out of town. We can improve the quality of our spaces and our experiences because we just have more to work with, and it's not a do or die situation.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
We appreciate it. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you,
Sarah, thanks for
Dave.
being a part of this as
Appreciate
well.
y'all.